The Wilson family Christmas party was exactly what you'd expect: over-the-top decorations, a guest list that read like a country club directory, and the usual brag fest about everyone's overachieving kids. I stood quietly by the window, watching snow drift over the estate's perfect lawn, doing my best to disappear. "Did you hear about Jennifer's daughter?" Aunt Catherine's voice rang out. "Made partner at Deote, at 32. And Michael's son just closed a merger in Singapore," Uncle Robert added. "He pulled in 8 figures. Then came the part one always dreaded. Aunt Catherine gave me a smile soaked in fake pity. "Still alone this year, Catherine? Are you still doing that? What was it again? Private equity?" I sipped my wine, thinking about the long nights, the complicated deals, and the quiet pride I felt in running my own firm. "Something like that." Mom jumped in, trying to be helpful. "Linda's daughter is hiring at Goldman. I could make a call for you." "Mom," I said, trying to stay calm, "I left Goldman 5 years ago, on purpose." Yes, she waved it off. "We remember." Oh, they remembered all right. It was the family's favorite cautionary tale, how Catherine Wilson left a prestigious job at Goldman Sachs to start her own investment firm, alone, no connections, no backup, and still, apparently, no partner. I caught Cousin Amanda whispering to her husband, no real job, such a shame." My phone buzzed with updates from 3 different time zones. A massive deal was closing tonight, a $2 billion private equity acquisition. Not that anyone here cared. "Are you at least dating someone?" Aunt Catherine pushed. "That nice Anderson boy is single again." I opened my mouth to reply, but just then, Dad walked in with his crew of business contacts. The real reason for this party, holiday networking in disguise. "John," Dad called out, shaking hands with a man in a sleek suit, "glad you made it. How's business?" That was John Marshall, CEO of Marshall Technologies, one of Dad's top clients. His company had been struggling lately, though I wasn't sure if Dad even realized it. "Well, Robert," Marshall began, then stopped when he saw me. His expression changed completely. "Miss Wilson, I didn't know you'd be here. Your father never mentioned." Dad blinked. "You know Catherine?" Marshall actually laughed. "Know her? Her investment saved my company." The room went dead silent. Aunt Catherine's wine glass froze mid-air. Dad frowned. "What investment?" Marshall was already walking toward me with a warm handshake. "The Series B round, the restructuring, Catherine's firm, Wilson Capital Partners. You must have heard of them." Mom dropped her canopy. The mood in the room cracked like glass. Suddenly, all the people who had pitied me were trying to listen in. $2 billion in private equity, Marshall said, excited now. "The most creative funding structure I've seen in 2 decades. The board was blown away by the deal she pulled off." Dad's face paled. He'd spent his life managing million-dollar accounts. Billion, with a B, was something else. "And the Asia expansion," Marshall added, showing off a chart on his phone, "doubled our value in just 6 months." Aunt Catherine cut in, confused, "But I thought she worked alone, from her apartment." I smiled. That apartment was actually the penthouse headquarters for a 30-person team, some of the smartest investment minds in the country. "Actually," I said, checking a new message, "we just opened a Singapore office. The apartment's now our East Coast hub." Cousin Amanda sputtered on her champagne. Mom looked genuinely shocked. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" "You never asked," I said, calm and clear, "too busy offering me junior roles at other firms." Marshall kept going, now surrounded by suddenly very interested family members. "Her employee ownership plan boosted our productivity by 40%, and that tech integration strategy, game changer." Ding, my phone lit up. My assistant had just sent the bonus report. I opened it and smiled. Even by Wall Street standards, the numbers were impressive. Marshall turned to me again. "And that analyst you sent us, phenomenal. I figured you wouldn't trust anyone average with $2 billion in assets." I just raised my glass and took another sip. Dad sank into a chair like the weight of it all had finally hit him. In his world, analysts were just junior number crunchers. In mine, they helped build billion-dollar empires. "Catherine," he said quietly, "why didn't you ever tell us about Marshall Technologies, about your firm, any of it?" "Client confidentiality," I said simply. I glanced around the room at the family who used to dismiss me, the aunts who tried setting me up with junior associates, the cousins who laughed about my little private equity project. Would it have made a difference? I asked. 3 years ago, you said I was making a mistake, that a woman couldn't make it alone in private equity. Silence. Then Marshall broke in. Actually, about that, the Financial Times piece goes live tomorrow. Titles: Rising Star in Private Equity, How Catherine Wilson is Rewriting the Rules. Mom dropped her canopy again. Sometimes, success doesn't need a grand speech, just the right moment to be seen. The party shifted, conversations changed. The smug hierarchy this family had built every Christmas collapsed under the weight of reality. Now they whispered about Wilson Capital Partners, about valuations, about how the invisible daughter turned out to be a major player in global finance. The Singapore office, Marshall was saying to a captivated group, is just the start. Her team is changing how we approach private equity in emerging markets. I stepped away to take a call from Tokyo, speaking fluent Japanese, another part of my life no one here had cared to ask about. When I returned, Dad was waiting, holding 2 glasses of his finest scotch. That was Tanaka, I told him, accepting one. The Osaka deal just closed, $3 billion. He nearly dropped his glass. $3 billion? Small deal for us, I said casually. The London acquisition last month was 5. We stood there, watching the party reinvent itself, Aunt Catherine frantically Googling my firm, Amanda practically chasing Marshall around the room for job leads. I looked you up, Dad finally said, after Marshall told me. I nodded. Forbes says Wilson Capital Partners is one of the fastest growing PE firms in history. You manage $20 billion? 23, actually. He blinked. And offices in 4 countries? 5, starting tomorrow, I corrected. Dubai opens with the market. Dubai? Mom had reappeared, still stunned. But, you told us you were just working on small investments. I smiled. That's what you wanted to hear. That was 3 years ago, I said with a smile. Things change. Dad looked up at me. Why didn't you ask for help? I could have introduced you to clients, opened a few doors. Because I needed to build it my way, I said. No shortcuts, no favors. I wanted every win to be mine, earned, not inherited. Before he could respond, Marshall returned. Phone pressed to his ear. Yes, Wilson Capital is leading the expansion. No, not Robert Wilson. Catherine. Yes, the Catherine Wilson. My mother flinched at the weight of those words. It was clear, the realization that her daughter had become someone without their knowledge was landing like a punch. The board meeting, Marshall said, turning to me. You'll be there, via hologram? I nodded. I'll be in Dubai for the new office, but we've integrated next-gen holographic tech, one of last year's acquisitions. Hologram? Uncle Robert choked. Like Star Wars? Better, I said. We're rolling it out across our portfolio companies next quarter. More efficient, greener. Dad was still stuck on something else. $20 billion under management, he whispered. That makes your firm's value. What? 12 billion? 15, I said. With the Dubai expansion and recent tech patents, we'll likely be valued closer to 15. You could hear the snow falling outside. That's how quiet the room had become. But you're still alone, Aunt Catherine blurted out, her last desperate reach for superiority. No husband, no family. I glanced at my buzzing phone and smiled. Actually, I'm engaged. Her eyes widened. 2. She's the head of AI research at MIT. We met during the hologram tech development. Mom sat down hard. Dad's scotch froze in midair. She, Aunt Catherine gasped. Sarah Chin, I said, brilliant, fearless, and 10 steps ahead of most of the industry. She's in Singapore right now, overseeing the integration of our quantum computing division. Marshall grinned. Chin's AI models transformed our analytics. Her work with Wilson Capital has changed how we assess risk, market trends, everything. She lands tomorrow, I added. Jet arrives at noon. Her jet? Mom whispered. Our jet, I corrected, a perk of running a successful firm, though we prefer commercial, smaller carbon footprint. Around us, the party was unrecognizable. Relatives who once dismissed me now buzzed with questions, trying to position themselves as suddenly supportive. Cousins who mocked my little PE firm were now asking about internships. Dad stood still, watching me. All this time, he said softly, we thought you were struggling. I met his eyes. All this time, I was building an empire, He whispered. Not an empire, I corrected, a revolution. We weren't just managing money, we were rewriting how private equity worked. Sustainable investing, employee ownership, tech-driven transformation, profit with purpose. Marshall nodded. The Wilson Innovation Foundation alone has funded more clean energy research than some countries. Mom straightened up. What foundation? The one we launched last year, I said. 10% of profits go into breakthrough projects, clean energy, biotech, quantum systems. Last month's MIT grant was $100 million. For cancer research, Marshall added, proud. That's what her Tokyo call was about. The results are already promising. Dad slowly lowered his glass. Catherine, we were wrong. I didn't let the moment pass quietly. Yes, I said, you were wrong about what success looks like. It's not about office titles or who you marry. It's about impact, change, leaving something better than you found it. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. I stepped away and tapped the screen. A holographic projection shimmered into focus, Sarah's image clear and vivid. Ready to change the world? She asked. I looked over my shoulder, at the family still trying to catch up to who I had become. I smiled. Already did, I said, let's do it again.